Hey everyone, it's Lisa Adams from the BIMA Network for Women. And today's tip, we're going to talk about when you take a deep dive on a meeting and on a meeting topic, how do you decide on ultimately what the next steps are, right? Okay, so a couple things. When you have different meetings, there's one type of meeting that I do encourage teams to have, and that is when there's a particular issue that really just can't be hashed out in a general weekly meeting, and it really needs to have a deep dive. And by deep dive, I mean, there probably needs to be some healthy debate, some conflict around it, debate or discussion, all the ideas thrown on the table, and then a decision made. And what I want to talk to you about today is how to make that decision. I get a lot of teams I work with that just don't have an idea of who's going to make the ultimate decision. Like, we're going to hash out this idea, but then what happens then? So I want to talk to you about the different decision-making processes and ways to be able to decide. And what you want to do is you want to be able to dig deep into a topic and decide on how you're going to decide before you dig in. So say, for instance, there's a certain pathway that your team needs to go, and you're trying to decide one way or another way, and you want all the ideas thrown on the table. There's some people that are really passionate about the first way and others that are passionate about the other way. And this is a good way to, or good method for bringing it together. And I would say at least an hour, maybe two, depends on the level of the team and how deep this conversation is and how important this is to the organization. I've got one team that I'm working with right now. They really need probably a good half of a day to hash out some shared vision, some long-term vision. And they are putting that on the schedule right now. And before they even walk into that meeting, they're going to decide how they're going to make that final decision. Now, let me take you through a couple things. So first off, there is some different ways to decide. And this is actually noted in Crucial Conversations, the book that's been a famous book out there for crucial conversations. And one way that they point out as far as the decision-making process is consensus. I don't like consensus. I think consensus just doesn't work. I think many times people will talk about, yes, oh yeah, we'll go with that way. And you try and get everybody in the room to say yes, and it just doesn't happen. I mean, unless there's only two of you in the room or three of you in the room, the consensus just never happens. And if it is, it's a fake consensus. It's fake harmony. And then you get people that may leave the room and say, oh, that's great, we made that decision, because they were excited about that decision. And you get others that said yes to the decision, but they only said yes because the meeting was so painful, they're tired of the topic, and they just wanted to move on. And then they leave the meeting and they say, oh gosh, that's a horrible decision, I totally disagree with that decision. So you never really truly get consensus. And I just don't even encourage leaders to even try and get it. So a second way to be able to decide is it's a command decision. So the leader or a leader comes in and just makes a decision without really involving other people. They just make the decision and this is how it's going to go. And that's okay. For certain types of decisions, that is the way to lead. And leaders should do that. But when we're talking about a deep dive conversation of really having to hash out ideas and make sure that everybody's input is given, the consultative way is a good way to do this. So what I mean by that is people come to the room, they come to the table, they're ready to discuss this topic, everybody gives their input, and then ultimately the person who's responsible for maybe that project, or maybe it's a big company decision and it's got to be the CEO who makes a decision. Whoever has been given the authority, they're the ones that make that decision. So they'll say, okay, I heard everybody's opinion. I think we've landed the plane at this point, and that idea is a great one. Thank you all for your input, but this is the way I'm going to go. This is what we're going to do, and this is why. And when they do that, many times I see teams that will absolutely go on board with that, whether it was their idea that was taken and applied or not. But if there's been some healthy conversation around it, then it works really well. And then the last but not least way to decide is voting. It's pretty much a majority wins, right? So if you've got 9 people in the room, 5 say yay, 4 say no, nay, and then the yays win. And that's how you can go. And with some types of topics and some decision-making process and topics, you can totally do that. So it's just good to know how you want to decide. And that's one thing I would say as far as these deep dive, hot topic types of things. Know how you're making the decision before you walk in there. And even as a group, if you have to say, if it's a CEO or if it's a leader saying, okay, gang, this is what we're going to do to make this decision. Or even I've had teams even debate about how they're going to make a decision. But it's something you have to consider. And then you make the decision, do what's the deadline, the next steps, whatever that is, and then move forward. And then there's clarity, there's buy-in, there's commitment. And before you know it, you'll see some really good team camaraderie and good results happen from that meeting and from that decision. So hopefully this tip has been helpful for you. Have a great one.